Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. I am so excited for today's video because we are kicking off the first day of palette week, the first palette week of 2021 on my channel, and we are going to be talking about 10 palettes that I am pulling out of my collection for the springtime that you may already have in your collection and could pull out with me. So if you guys are interested in seeing the 10 palettes that I'm most excited to use this spring, stay tuned. First, if you have yet to subscribe to my channel and you love project painting content, palette content, or you just like to chit chat about makeup, I would love if you would consider subscribing before moving on. And other than that, let's just get into the video. All right guys, we have like a million different colors going on the face. I did like a cool toned eye and wasn't thinking, then did like a warm toned blush, then I tried to cover it up with cool toned blush, then I put on a lip gloss that was like way more coral than I expected, so then I tried to like put on a more cool toned liquid lip, and then this is what we're left with. And we have like a bright shirt, but hello, my nail polish almost perfectly matches my shirt, and because of that we should ignore every other problem or flaw that is going on, because embrace it, right? Also, I'm not sure what's going on with my hair. Like, no clue. I considered cutting it myself today just for shits and gigs, but that's always ended in disaster and I got a little bit scared. Okay, rambling done. We always have to get things out of the way. Oh, and like my self-tan isn't that bad, but my hands are super white, so whatever. At least that means I'm washing my hands, right? Let's talk about the palettes that I have. I did try to mostly include palettes that you can still get your hands on, but there's a couple I'm unsure of, and maybe I'll start with those, but you may already have these in your collection. So up first, I have the ABH Amrezy palette. I always forget about this palette, and this is such a good one. So if you still have this in your collection, I mean, I just feel like this gives me all of the spring vibes. It has like the warm tone mattes, but then you have some of these like more fun pinks and purple shimmers, and I just always forget how much I actually really enjoy this palette. I feel like every time I pull this out, I'm really happy with my looks. This is another one too where if you just want to reach in for like a warm matte shade, I feel like you have a good range of shadows to select from, or you could just pop one of these like lighter pinks on the lid and do like a one shadow shimmer look and be done with it. So I'm actually really excited to pull this palette out, and you guys will have to let me know, do you have this palette and do you use it a lot? Because I always forget about mine. This next one I think you can still get, but I swear the different palettes within this collection like go in and out of stock, and I never know which ones you can get versus which ones you can't. But the Huda Beauty Coral Obsessions palette, I look forward to pulling this one out every springtime. This is something too that when I could travel, this always came traveling with me because it just gives me warm weather vibes. I really like the range of mattes in this palette, and oftentimes I will kind of use this as a complementary palette with another palette. You do have two shimmers in this palette, so I can create a full look with this, but sometimes I like to use this for the mattes and then I'll reach for like a more intense shimmer, or I'll reach for a shimmer out of a different palette. Regardless, I adore this palette. I always am happy with the looks I create with this one too, and this is again one that I get so excited to bring out every single springtime. The last one that I'm not sure if you can still get your hands on or not is this one from Sugar Pill. So I picked this up last year kind of on a whim as I was starting to dive into color more, and I will say I have not experimented with color as much this year as I was last year. I've really been sticking to like neutrals and purples this year, but I am really excited to pull this out again and really have some more fun with color. When it's warmer weather, I just feel more colorful, so this is something that I had so much fun with last year, especially like these pinks and purples I had so much fun with, but you have like this really fun bright neon pop of orange as well, and this just makes me think of warmer weather and just like fun in the sun. So I'm really excited to pull this one out too. It's also just such a cute little palette, so if you can still get this, I'll link it below. Sometimes it's available on Beautylish, so I'll link it if it's available. This one, speaking of corals slash peaches, this one from ColourPop. It's the Baby Got Peach palette. Now this is like constantly going in my Panlosh eyeshadow series, but this is something that I would naturally pull out for the spring summertime. Again, just because I really enjoy peaches and corals this time of year, and this is just kind of the perfect palette for that. I again really enjoy the range of mattes and shimmers. I'm like, what am I trying to say? And sometimes when I'm feeling like a little bit out there, I will also reach into the glitter, and I kind of like the glitter as well. I'm not super anti-glitter, I just don't reach for it that often, but this is one that absolutely every spring since I've had it, I get a ton of use out of it. Speaking of warm browns and peaches slash corals, also the Dose of Colors Sassy Siennas. Now this is an all matte palette. I do not mind. Usually, again, I use this as a complementary palette, but I love the warm brown shades. And then I also do really enjoy these coral pink shades as well. I just think this is a really fun one, again, for warmer weather. This is something that I really enjoy reaching for when it is springtime, so absolutely pulling this one out. Also, I couldn't not grab my Huda Beauty Mercury Retrograde palette. So this is what this one looks like. I feel like I talk about this palette quite a bit on my channel, and looking at this, I feel like this could really go one of two ways. Like you really can, or this palette really could be versatile to really any season. I mean, makeup is makeup, and it is what you make it, so it's not like makeup has to be like, oh, I'm only wearing this in a certain season. However, this I love because the mattes are more soft and a little bit more romantic, with the exception of like these two shades right here. Which also, like, softer tones really makes me think of spring as well. But it has some fun pops of color too. And again, I find myself playing with color more in the spring, summertime for whatever reason. So I personally am really excited to pull this one out. This is the mascot of my life palette. I always say that when I talk about this palette. My life is like constant Mercury retrograde. I love chaos. So I'm excited to play with that one. The Natasha Denona, is this the Sunrise palette? I was debating putting this in because I also feel like this just fits the aesthetic of like a very summery palette as well. Just very, very fiery, and it's not quite as soft. Like sometimes in spring, I think of more like softer tones, and then summer, I think of like a little bit deeper, a little bit more sultry, a little bit more like fiery. But I also feel like with a fluffy brush, I have done some softer looks with this, and I really like this shade right here. Like for some reason in the spring, I always want to create looks using this shade. I just love this palette for this shade specifically. I mean, I really love this palette for a lot of these shades, but there are some really nice like neutral, like champagne, gold, and pink shades as well. So I absolutely know I'll get a ton of use out of this in the spring, and it will just continue on into the summertime. And then the final three palettes I have are newer to my collection. So I don't believe two of them I know I didn't have. Sorry if you can hear the plane. Two of them I know I didn't have last spring. I think this one I got in the summer too. So I did not have this one last spring either. This one is the Kaleidos Sashimi City palette. I adore this palette. This is such a good one. I was mentioning in a video, I think that will go up in a few days, but I was talking about this shade specifically. I was talking about palettes I will replace or would replace if I lost. And this shade in this palette is just like the coolest shade. Like this might be one of my favorite shades in my entire collection. It just looks so glossy and so wet. You can wear this on its own to just give that sort of off-duty model, like glossy eyelid sort of look. But I've also used this as a lid topper just to intensify a look, and I've gotten so many compliments every time I wear this shade. I've worn this to work and I get tons of compliments, so I just love this palette for the shade. But this also does just remind me of spring because it has like the kind of like peachy toned brown shades. I also really like this sort of like duochrome pink shade. It's like a pink, it's such like, I did not expect to love this palette as much as I do, but this might be one of my favorite palettes in my entire collection. Like if I lost my whole collection but still had this, I would be very, very happy because the shimmers are just like I don't even have words. Like, ugh. This one is like, it can go from like pretty intense pink to almost just like a glossy neutral too. It's such a cool duochrome. So I'm gonna get so much use out of this in the spring, and if you don't own this one, I would recommend checking it out. Also from Nabla, their Cutie palette, and this one is the Metropolitan palette. And this one I just really love just for this shade, as well as the shade Alaska, which actually Alaska, I don't even know if I would consider this to be like a springtime shade because it is more of like an icy blue slash white shade, but I also really enjoy these two more neutral shades, and sometimes in the spring I like just like a soft neutral with a shimmer on the lid. The shade Dissolution is so pretty as well. There's Dissolution right there. I just think that this could be so beautiful, honestly, as like a one shadow and you're done, or even just topped on a neutral eye. And then you have this really fun pop of neon, which just honestly just looks like spring to me. So I wanted to include this one kind of as like a wild card. And then finally from Oden's Eye, I love Oden's Eye. I love all of the eyeshadows that I've tried from them, but specifically for the spring, I selected the Alva 1 eyeshadow palette. This is what it looks like. Again, kind of just has those like softer, more romantic vibes. This one is definitely a little bit more mauve toned than some of the other palettes that I've included, but I also really love that you have your pops of yellow in here as well. And all of the shimmers in this palette just give me all the springtime vibes. So absolutely, I will get a ton of use out of this one this spring. But those are the 10 palettes that I will be pulling out to focus on this spring. That is going to wrap it up for today's video. I would love to hear in the comments below, what palettes are you most excited to pull out of your collection to use in the spring? What are the palettes that remind you the most of spring? Thank you guys so much for sticking around to watch today's video and for supporting my channel as you guys always do. I love you guys so much, and I will see you tomorrow in another eyeshadow video. Bye.